Hello and welcome to another episode of The Standings, where we review the sports standings except we're sitting. I'm Daniel and I'm joined by Cameron and Morgan today. How was your week, both of you?
Pretty uneventful, I must say, but not the worst.
Spring training's back and the Yankees are going to the World Series.
And there was the NHL Four Nations, which was pretty exciting, which we'll have to get into. But moving into our first topic, we'll talk about the Vikings quarterback situation and who should be the Week 1 starter for this team going forward. You can talk about a lot of aspects here. I'll let you go first.
I have two options here. One roster option, one free agency option if we're going to pick somebody up. So roster, J.J. McCarthy. He's young, and he really wants them to give him a chance. Give him a chance Week 1. Let him try it. It can't hurt him. And if he fails Week 1, put somebody else in there. Free agency option here, Jimmy Garoppolo. I know, veteran quarterback, old. He's not really a starter in the sense anymore. And you're like, do you really want to put him on the team? But he could help train up J.J. McCarthy from this role. So if you have Jimmy start Week 1, then you could really boost up J.J. McCarthy there too.
I think the only reasonable option should be Daniel Jones. One, he'll be way cheaper than Sam Darnold. He has starting experience, and he was in a playoff game, which I don't think Sam Darnold is really good at doing. And then, yet again, it'll be a perfect segue. If Daniel Jones sucks, McCarthy can step in. It could be a flip-flop of what they did with Ryan Fitzpatrick and Tua Tagovailoa.
So my answer to this is, if the Vikings are looking at this, they have to ask themselves two questions. One, is it a win-now mode? And if it's a win-now mode, can we win by getting somebody that's a proven winner, or do we go and have somebody that's on our roster, like we talked about, with a Sam Darnold, a J.J. McCarthy, or go and get a guy like Brock Purdy maybe? So with that being said, a win-now mode would entail Aaron Rodgers, Matthew Stafford, who already have a Super Bowl under their belt. But if you're looking at a young guy, you might want to re-sign Sam Darnold because he can play that game manager role, and I know he had 2 bad games at the end of the year, but the season had a lot of upside. I mean, he was in the MVP conversation for some people. And as far as Brock Purdy goes, he's probably the in-between with both, as in he's been in a Super Bowl, he's proven he can win, he's young, he can be in that game manager role. But you have to look at J.J. McCarthy, and you spent such a high draft pick on him. I really don't see any other answer than using your young guy that you went up to draft for.
To counteract your Purdy point, they're actively trying to re-sign him. Debo's gone, and they're making money for Purdy. So I think that it's just an egregious take. The Niners would be stupid to give up Purdy.
And I totally understand that. It would be more of the Vikings would want somebody like that. Not that the Niners would want to get rid of him. But like we talked about last week, is that the Niners might try and get somebody to be in there for a year. So that would be the only scenario where it would work. And that's why I throw him in there to that conversation, is because he's a proven winner and he's young, whereas these other guys either have one aspect or the other.
One fun option that you're not thinking about is Tua. With the regime change probably coming next year, and people seem not to be happy about Tua, that could be an interesting pick.
Tua is very interesting for a lot of teams, to be honest, because he's young and he hasn't proven that he can win at least a playoff game. But if you were on the right team, maybe he could win. And that could go for a lot of teams, honestly. Moving into our next topic, we're going to talk about Luka and the Lakers and how optimistic should the Lakers be after their win against the Nuggets and moving forward.
I feel like the Lakers as a team, they always have to be a bit optimistic. They're the Lakers. It's such a great fan base and everything there. And now with Luka and LeBron learning how to play together, and in that last game, they had 57 points together. So to see them build this synergy together could go very well, but you don't want to see them start battling each other for a number 1 spot.
I think you're obviously still worried. You can't beat the Nuggets in 4 games, I can argue. Nikolai is going to absolutely posterize every single one of you. Then, if you beat the Nuggets, how are you going to beat OKC?
I think that's a great point heading into a series with them, is that Denver was coming off this 9-game winning streak. They're off a high, and they were bound to lose at some point. But when we look at this in particular, it is a statement win for the team, and it builds the confidence of the team moving forward. To me, they looked like a complete team more than they ever have before, because all they were missing was a center, and you can argue in today's NBA, Jackson Hayes really isn't that bad. There's a lot of small ball, there's a lot of threes being shot, and if Luka continues to play like this, as in being a distributor and somebody who accompanies LeBron, you could look at this team being a finals team, in my own opinion, at the end of the year.
I feel like they'll make it a bit, but I don't know if they'll make it to the finals this year. I say next season, if LeBron's still playing well and Luka's still playing well, once we see a whole season with them together, then we see a lot more final championship
I'm going to
there.
have to agree with Morgan on that one.
All right, well, that's a good conversation. We'll head to a commercial break. We'll be right back after this.
Hi everybody, I'm Nico Moletta. I'm an anchor for Royal Studios. You can catch me every Friday on Royals Weekly. We talk about different things going on around campus, the successes of our student athletes, and other Royals Weekly exclusive things that you have to tune in to see. So I hope to see you there, and I'll send you back to the standings.
Welcome back to the standings. We're going to talk about the Spurs and the recent sad news that has really taken the team by storm. First of all, being that Wembanyama had a right blood clot in his shoulder, so he is out for the year. And then upon that, only a couple days later, we learned that Greg Popovich is not going to be with the team for maybe not the whole season, but we'll see what happens. But he won't be with the team for now, and he's getting old. He might have to leave the team. So my question to you both is, what event over this weekend has been more impactful for the Spurs, and what will be going forward?
I think it's hard to compare a coach versus a player leaving. It's so sad to see it happen at the same time, too. But the team itself, the morale must be so down and low right now. So for the team, the biggest loss right now for them is losing Wemby as a player on the court, but thinking for the longevity of the Spurs, Popovich has been with the Spurs since '96, and he's been a coach. And as an organization as a whole, that's going to be a bigger loss for them. And going into the future, you don't really know what the future holds in that coaching position right now.
And I'm going to have to argue, losing both at the same time is probably the worst thing that can happen. Keep in mind, this same thing killed Chris Bosh's career, so there's long-term concern for Wemby. But in terms of Popovich, I think it's time. I think there has been murmurs about him getting axed right before they got Wemby. So either way, it's time. And this at the same time sucks, but this is probably the best thing for their future. If they have a shot at getting flag, that team is really scary next year.
The transition from moving away from Popovich is very difficult for the team, and it will be very difficult for that front office to never see him again and try and build a new culture. But they had to have seen this coming with his age. They had to have seen a transition, and they had to have been prepared for it. What they weren't prepared for was Wembanyama, and that's why this is the bigger loss. Because with this, the injury now, you can't build chemistry with De'Aaron Fox now, and you're heading into next season a little rusty. And that's not good when they want to be playoff contenders and when they have such high expectations. What this will do, though, is if it brings in a new culture, maybe it could make the team even better than we've ever seen before. The Spurs shouldn't take their foot off the gas, though, is my opinion. They should keep making moves, and especially when they get to the draft. It's going to be really exciting for this team, and moving forward, they might look like a team like we saw with the Thunder, where they got so many draft picks, they have so many young guys, that they eventually become one of the contenders in the league for the finals. Moving into our next topic, we're going to talk about the NHL Four Nations Face-Off and if it should be an annual event and should it replace things like the All-Star Game.
With the NHL Four Nations, this did great viewership. 16.1 million viewers across all of North America. Those are numbers we're not seeing with hockey right now, so this is a great thing to see. Four Nations, though, if we do it every year, it could be good, but with the Olympics, it's hard because it'll take away viewership and more people are going to watch the Olympics around the world. So what I suggest is alternating between the Four Nations, All-Star Game, and then the Olympics to kind of keep some energy going in the NHL world.
Honestly, definitely agree with you on that, but I think they're going to have to get rid of the All-Star Game and Four Nations entirely for the year of the Olympics. Nobody's going to want to play in that, risk their health, especially when they're playing for a gold medal. And actually not having Russia involved is also a giant blow to that. Not having Ovechkin, who is chasing Gretzky's greatness, is just a huge blow, in my opinion. I think Russia should definitely be in there. It should become the Five Nations tournament every 2 years.
I think I'm going to agree and slightly disagree with each of you. With the All-Star Game, I think it should still be a thing every year because it brings in those new fans, like we talked about with the NFL, where it brings in those new fans and they get accumulated to the players and everything. But at the same time, the All-Star Game really does have that injury risk, so I'm agreeing and disagreeing there. And then as far as the event goes, we have to talk about how that viewership was so high. And so from a marketing perspective, it's a resounding yes. It should be every year, and we should do this all the time. But at the same time, the Olympics do happen, and we want to see Team Russia in the tournament. So I don't really know what to think about this.
What would you think if you changed the time of year it happens? The Olympics happen in the winter. Say they do Four Nations in like the fall or something like that, or the summer, just to keep some flow going there.
It would, especially from a marketing perspective, that would have to be really geared towards a certain audience, because I don't know how you could bring someone into something that's not happening during the season. So they'd have to find some way to work around it, to be honest with you.
And you also can't devalue the Stanley Cup at that point. When were you going to wait for it? The Four Nations at the end, or are you going to value the Stanley Cup, the regular season winner, more?
All right, well, let's go to a commercial break. We'll be right back after this.
Hi everyone, I'm Akilah Wallace. I'm an anchor for Royal Studios. Right now, I'm behind the scenes of the standings. You can find me on the Scranton Scope every Thursday. We talk about movies, music, and about events and spots in our area that you can pop up to and have a good time. Back to the standings.
Welcome back from the break. We're going to talk about the MLB Strike Call Challenging ABS system, and should this be an implementation for the regular and postseason going forward. So I'll give you the details of it. So the batter, pitcher, or catcher can tap their head and signal immediately after the call is made by the umpire that they want to challenge the call. Then it goes to the system and it comes back. The teams get 2 challenges a game, with the challenge being rewarded back if they are successful. So should this be an implementation going forward?
I say go all in. Regular season, postseason. The MLB is going to do it anyway. If you can't beat them, join them. I say that this is a great opportunity to add this robotic element as well as this human element to it. It makes the game a little bit more exciting. It keeps you on your toes, and I feel like the players get really excited when they get to challenge a call in a game. When we saw the Cubs and Dodgers play, they were so excited and so eager to get these challenges, and when they won them, they were so excited. So let's keep this going. It keeps a new rule, and it keeps baseball a little bit more interesting right now.
I'm all for removing the Angel Hernandezes of the world, but I have to disagree. After watching it in AAA all of last year, there's still some niche kinks that they have to keep out of it. Having 2 challenges is really demeaning, where they are afraid to tap their head and challenge anything, even if it's a blatant thing. They're going to get reamed out by their coach if somebody, especially somebody batting under 200, taps their head and it's a strike.
That's one aspect of it that won't be talked about a lot, is that they are going to get frustrated with their own players. It's going to cause more altercations between the coaches and players. Now, I want to look at this in 3 aspects, and the first and foremost being that this eliminates a lot of altercations that end up revolving in ejections in the game between the umpire and the batter, or the pitcher and catcher. And for another thing, it gets rid of a lot of makeup calls. So if something's wrong around the bases and the umpire tries to get that call back in the batter's box, that's not going to happen anymore. The batter's going to catch on to that real quick, or the pitcher, and say, hey, I want that reviewed. And then another thing is, this kind of allows the fans the opportunity to impact the game, because if the umpire makes a bad call and they have to immediately after tap their head, and all you hear from the fans is, oh my God, this impacts the game now. These players feed off the fans, and this is so interesting, and I'd love to see this in the postseason, but right now I think it's just stay in spring training and move on to the regular season.
I'm going to say human frustration is going to be a big part of this. If there's bad calls after the 2 taps are done, there is still going to be those altercations every game.
There will be some learning curves here, but I'm excited to see where the MLB goes with this.
That's all for the standings.